So the culture piece, I mean, that's a huge, I mean, you're just talking about that. So it starts within us. And if we live this out, and so as we start to work on the internal world, and as we work with individuals, and they realize that they're functioning out of a fear-based culture versus an empowering culture. So I have a client who called me and said, "Hey Tim, I'm going to fire this guy. I'm so frustrated. He is just constantly showing up late. He's not doing his job right. I'm so irritated." I said, "Okay, well, you could do that." And I said, "What did you do?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to call him and threaten him." I said, "If he doesn't do change, he's going to have to get fired." I said, "Well, if you do that, you're creating a fear-based culture." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you're threatening them, so they're operating now out of fear of punishment." He goes, "Well, what else am I supposed to do? I mean, I gotta get people to do their work." I said, "Well, what if you do this?" And I call it creating a culture of honor. And a lot of times the word honor is like, okay, I'm just celebrating what people are doing. But I believe there's accountability, responsibility, and ownership inside of that as well. So I said, so we'll call the guy named Joe and say, okay, what if you bring Joe in and you hired him because he was a good guy, right? Yeah. And he had good qualifications, right? Well, yeah. I said, remind him of that. Hey, Joe, when I hired you, you did this well, you did this well, you killed it at this, you did this and this. It was amazing. You're really good at this. What am I doing? I'm reminding Joe who he is. I'm honoring him. I said, but Joe, over the last 2 months, I've been experiencing this. And there's a big gap here. Like, you've been showing up on time with this and just what there. I said, we got a problem. What are we going to do about it? And I just sit there and wait for Joe to recognize, oh, wait a second. He's not telling me what to do. He's allowing, Joe is now have to take ownership, like, oh, it's our problem. It's not just you're telling me what to do to fix it. You're letting me take ownership and responsibility. He goes, well, okay, I'll show up on time. I'll do this. Okay, that's great. How about if I give you some suggestions? And give him some suggestions. And I said, and they're like, yeah, I can do that. That's great. Well, listen, we're going to revisit this in a little bit. What did I do? I allowed him to take ownership, responsibility, and he's coming up with the game plan himself. And I said, listen, if in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, this hasn't changed, you're basically communicating to me, Joe, that you don't want to work here. Because if you're passionate about this job, you'd be on time, you'd be giving everything you got, all these different things. And so what that did is, instead of a fear-based culture, he created a culture of empowering that individual to really run with things. And it changed the whole dynamic of the situation. Because